All right, good afternoon, everybody. We're going to call the meeting of the Safety and Security Committee to order. Today is Tuesday, February the 27th, a little bit after 1 p.m. And we're ready to start our meeting. We're joined today, we do have a quorum of members. Joining us as counsel from Thankton Smith is Mr. Neil Ramey. Glad you could join us. I'm Chris Haggerty, I'm the chair, and we have our committee vice chair, Dr. Winging, present, and our other committee members, Vice Chair Monica Johnson-Hosler, Mr. Tyler Swanson, Mr. Sam Hershey. We have some other members that had some conflicts but are joining us streaming online but are not participating online. All right. First item on our agenda today is that we need review and approval of the minutes from June 27th of our Safety Security meeting.
So moved that we approve those minutes.
Second.
We have a motion from Mr. Hershey, a second from Vice Chair Johnson-Hosler. All in favor of approving those minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, those minutes have been adopted. And then we also have, going back a minute, additional minutes from our November 28th Safety and Security Committee meeting.
So moved that we approve those minutes.
Second.
And we have a motion from Mr. Hershey, and we have a second from Vice Chair Johnson-Hosler to approve those committee minutes. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so the two sets of minutes have both been adopted. Thank you, everyone. First item on our agenda today is we have a presentation on the RAVE pilot program. This is the panic button application. You all have seen the materials that were uploaded in Assembly about it. We'll welcome our Director of Security, Mr. Kendrick Scott, and his staff, and we will hear about the presentation. Thank you.
Well, just welcome everybody. I'd like to just go ahead and tee up kind of what we're going to do first and who's doing this part. We are going to do a pilot of a RAVE Panic app. It's a piece of software that Mr. Cortez is going to do the presentation on. So there's a short video in it that will also give you some more information on it, but he's going to give you the lion's share of the information today. So I'm going to go ahead and let him get started. I'm going to just pop up to go do some technical things when the video comes up to play, and then I'll be right back, but he's going to go ahead and drive the presentation from this point forward. So thank you for your attention today.
Thanks, sir. Thank you all for your time today. I really appreciate the opportunity. Today our department is here to inform the board and present this project that we're embarking on, where we're going to pilot this application for our district. For the presentation today, our goal is to kind of walk our audience through the problem statement, kind of what got us here, provide some background and information of what the RAVE Panic Button is and what the state initiative is related to RAVE. We're going to go through a brief description of the facts and the product itself and what the features it provides, and then also we're going to kind of break down the pilot concept that we want to apply here within our district. So I definitely welcome any questions during the presentation. At the end, we're going to have time for dialogue, of course, but anything that comes up, please feel free to interrupt at any time.
Thank you.
So initially, a problem statement, as we all know, our district is continuously assessing our response, not only the emergency response, but also the emergency planning program that we have for our schools. During that process, we've identified two main areas that need attention, that need for us to implement some other initiatives. The first one is the need for faster mass notification during emergencies within a building. The second one is the need to communicate with the staff during that emergency. So as you can see in the graphic, the cycle of an emergency goes through prevention, preparedness, response, recovery, mitigation. Usually we have a lot of time for four of them, which are mitigation, prevention, preparedness, and recovery. Usually for response, we don't have a lot of time because it's immediately right after the emergency. So that's what RAVE is providing to us, is enhancing that part of our program. A little bit of background as far as how the initiative was adopted by the state. So 2015 was when the North Carolina General Assembly established the School Risk and Response Management System. When that was established, they received 5 different directives. One of those was to implement or identify a digital panic alarm application for the schools throughout the state. 2017, that task was assigned to emergency management with the state. So what they did was they met with school officials, 911 centers, first responders, SROs, and other emergency managers to really identify what the needs or what the capabilities that they were looking for in the application. After that, they developed 12 key functional requirements, which were included in an RFI that was provided to several vendors, which of those, RAVE was the only one that met most of those applications, most of those requirements, I'm sorry. So that's where the assignment was given to NC Emergency Management, and then they selected RAVE for the state just based on their criteria. After that was established in 2018, Emergency Management performed and approved the concept for the application, where 17 schools across the district, across the state were selected to have tests of that application within those schools. One of those being Apex Friendship High School within our district, which was piloted in 2018. During that assessment, they performed tests on medical scenarios and active assailant scenarios, as well as the features of Staff Assist, which is communication within the staff, notifications to 911, and other features of the application were tested, successfully tested during that pilot. This is pretty much an eye chart on the funding that was provided for the implementation of the application by the state. So again, this is funded by the state for all school districts and charter schools as well. Now, this brings us to today. So last year, our office embarked in reviewing and evaluating this application and seeing how it could fit not only our school system, but our program for security and emergency response. The way we did this, we had a benchmarking study with 4 different counties, 3 of those within the state, 1 of them out of state, that currently had RAVE, either because they had it independently or because it was mandated by the state, or like the one out of state by their state commission, it was mandated by them. It was 4 different districts, about 20 different type of criteria were used, from how the app is implemented, the features that it provides, the challenges that it may have with the implementation or training. So it was a real comprehensive assessment of their program and how it's implemented on their districts. From that benchmarking, we kind of came up with a core series of functions that it provides that we identify that can be helpful to our program, and some of those are listed here, which is direct communication with on-site resources. So the application will allow you to not only communicate with 911 centers so that you can deploy, fire, EMS, or police, but also your local SRO at the school, your security officer at the school if they have one, your APs, your team within the school, not only that, but also the district. So all different resources that are either required or needed to respond will be notified as soon as that application is activated. Geofencing and GPS capabilities allow us to geofence a school, so we can identify that the emergency is happening within the school. Not only that, but it allows us to identify where the emergency or where the button is activated. That information is it's also provided to law enforcement, so they know if there's a medical emergency, they'll know what floor, what room, what area, whether it's the stadium or the gym or whatever the emergency is taking place. Is being used statewide and sponsored by the state, so it does not create any additional cost to the district. It really allows all those different resources to be notified within 2 seconds. Once the application is activated, the application will route the user to call 911, and at the same time, the application will then notify all the different people that need to respond to the emergency. So kind of going into the description of the product, so as I mentioned before, it's an app. It's a software application that is downloaded into our phones. It works both with data and with Wi-Fi, so any schools that don't have good reception, Wi-Fi can also be used to activate and deploy the application. There are four key features that helps us really see the value of this application. And one of those is notifying the personnel that needs to be notified. The emergency call button, where you can call 911, fire, or EMS with just one button, no need to dial. Staff Assist is one of those that can help our staff not only communicate during day-to-day operations when they may need a nurse to come and assist with a student, or they need some type of assistance within the school or from the district, but it also allows them to communicate during an emergency. So if they were to activate the panic button, law enforcement and emergency personnel could communicate back and forth with them to know their status, and also has live video capabilities that allows law enforcement or first responders to assess the scene if they can make contact with the person that activated the application. So here, we'll go through the slide. There's going to be a quick video that really kind of summarizes all the different features that I just went through. Like I said, it allows for quick activation. It is used by teachers and staff only. One of the criteria that we had for the benchmarking was understanding the use by either parents or students, just to understand the concept. That will not be the case. It's only staff that is authorized to use the app that will be the ones that can have access to it. That are authorized and that opt in into using the app. Again, there are features that help with the day-to-day operation of the school. One of the key features that we also saw was that it allows us to upload first response plans, emergency operations plans, or any type of evacuation plans, any documents or resources that can be used by either first responders or the staff during an emergency. So by just clicking on the application, they can download and see those plans or those documents. Again, geofencing and GPS allows us to really understand the location of the emergency and enhance our response to it. So, Mr. Scott, if you don't mind, I'll read it.
In today's world, time is everything, especially during an emergency. When a critical situation occurs, every second matters. How do you know when and where an emergency is happening? How quickly are you informing others about an incident? How can you help 911 handle an influx of emergency calls? Do first responders know what's happening before they arrive on scene? How do they know what resources they need? Do they know the closest and safest access point to the emergency? The Rave Panic Button app is fully integrated with 911 centers. With a push of a button, the Panic Button app begins a communication workflow, instantly connecting you with 911, first responders, and necessary personnel, streamlining your emergency response. The app delivers critical response data, including details about the type of emergency and the location to 911 and first responders for a more coordinated response. First responders can quickly determine where to go and who needs help as they arrive on scene. An alert also automatically triggers mass notifications, digital signage, and more. Live streaming video allows 911 and first responders to view an emergency in real time to gather more critical information. Key stakeholders can initiate status checks with those at the scene to find out what's happening, where they are located, and who is injured. The Staff Assist feature allows authorized employees to communicate non-emergency information, such as minor medical incidents, security disruptions, and administrative updates to specific groups without calling 911. A customized content directory gives employees, teachers, and staff access to important information, like active assailant incident procedures, wellness guidelines, and quarantine protocols, so they'll be ready to act when the time comes. Stakeholders like you can also perform wellness checks with employees. Communicating instantly will improve your response times. The Panic Button mobile app is Safety Act certified by the Department of Homeland Security and the only solution with statewide deployments. You'll have the confidence knowing that you are doing all that you can to keep people safe and informed. The Panic Button app helps keep everyone safe before, during, and after an emergency.
Thanks, sir. So like I said, that was a quick breakdown of the features that we just went through. So finally, this is taking us now to what we're going to present to the board today, which is the concept of a pilot that we're going to implement for the district to really test and assess not only how effective it is, but how it fits our program and our needs. So for the pilot, we've selected, randomly selected, 28 schools within the district. Those are equally identified with every grade level and area within the district. What we've done is we've provided that list to the area superintendents for them to review and approve, and that has taken place. The next steps after that is going to engage with those principals and staff to really inform them about what the pilot is, what the expectations are, get feedback from them as far as what is the best way for us to deploy and implement it at their schools. We're implementing a training and communications plan with our vendor to make sure that the staff is fully trained on how the application is used and the benefits that it has for them. The pilot will be implemented in the last quarter, academic quarter of the traditional calendar year, so we're looking at April when this is going to be started, and then after that, we are going to evaluate, collect feedback, and then make any recommendations on whether or not it will be implemented or any other next steps that are needed for the program. So with that, I'll go to any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you. We'll go around the table, see who has questions. Mr. Swanson?
Thank you so much for providing this overview. I have a couple of questions. I know you mentioned that this is going to be available via mobile app. So let's say hypothetically Wi-Fi goes out or whatnot, or when I taught at Enloe, although my cubicle was in the basement of the bottom floor of the school, and on Wi-Fi I still didn't have access or couldn't get emails or whatnot. So will there be a version that's available for a desktop for teachers to use, or is that down the road, or is that out of our control?
As of right now, the option they have is an application for your phone. They don't have anything that's desktop supported. The benefits that it has is that it provides functions of both data and Wi-Fi, so we do have two options. I do understand the limitations that we have with again, some areas not having reception, some others not having good Wi-Fi. We have engaged our tech services team so that they can assess that part of the program as well.
And I have one more, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Swanson.
Sorry, I was going to add some, in fact, mind if I just add a little bit to it? Just want to let everyone know, make sure we understand it. The pilot is designed also to let us know what the kids, we're in the very early stage, right? So we had their reps come out and tell us basically what that you saw in the video, what it does. A lot of products, a lot of security products sound great on paper, but until you get them and get to actually play with it and see what it will do, sales guy can tell you everything. It's going to be great, it's going to work everywhere. Then you get in the building, as to your point, you go down the basement and lo and behold, it doesn't work. So that's the big part of what that pilot is going to do, is we'll have what I feel like is going to be a pretty broad look district-wide at a lot of different types of schools, a lot of different types of building materials, a lot of different buildings. So we're hoping at the end of that 9 weeks, when we ask the principals, hey, because we'll have a test phase where they can actually go and see, is it working everywhere in your building? Is there places where there's dead zones? Are there places where there's no data, no Wi-Fi, no nothing, to where we need to get with their developers and say, hey, look, here's what we found in using your product in some places and it did not work. They are going to have to address those. So to your point, we do need to get in it and test it and play with it to find those very places where those things may be a challenge for us to use the app.
That works, thank you. And I'm also along those lines concerned that if it's optional for teachers to download, how do we really test or prepare for what may happen if it's optional for teachers to engage in? When you throw the term optional out there, it's a very, we really don't know how many folks would engage to be a part of this pilot. So I would hope that with some of these schools that if maybe we could set up a specific number of teachers that we would like to see, because if it's to enhance security and safety in schools, in my opinion, I don't think it should be optional. I think every teacher should have access and be willing to try it, just so we can get a better feel of what works and what does not work.
Absolutely. So what I would add to that is, I really believe this is what I think is going to happen. When folks utilize this and see how good it is and how fast it is, it's going to sell itself. It sold me relatively quickly, but again, I got the sales pitch. But I think if, for example, if you're a teacher and I'm a teacher, I've got it, you do not, information comes to me and you don't get it, you'll probably want it. Yeah, but I do agree with you. It does no good to have a pilot and there's 2 teachers out of 100. It doesn't give us good data, but we will be pushing to get as much buy-in to it as we possibly can.
And I think not only for the pilot, but something that we learned during the benchmarking process was that for those districts, it was never mandated. It was opt-in just because of their policies did not dictate for people to mandate for you to download something to your personal phone. But what they saw was exactly that. They saw that once you start participating and really educating people on what the app does and doesn't do, which sometimes the privacy, it's a concern, that's when you get the buy-in from from the staff. So I think education and training is going to be a huge portion of it to really not only get their buy-in, but really make them understand what it provides for them.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Mr. Swanson. Going around for other questions. I know Dr. Ing had a question.
Yes, thank you so much for the presentation. I think the technology is very exciting to me. There are some, of course, the implementation is really going to be the key of whether it's successful or not. And I do think that, the buy-in is going to be important. And I think if it's easy to use, I think there'll be more of a buy-in for a lot of people. The question I have is kind of more logistical. If the alert is triggered, what if multiple people were to trigger it at the same time, or approximately the same time for the same event? Or even, let's say, there's two separate events going on the same campus. How, what's the process of, how are they going to be able to process all those things coming in at the same time? Second question is, once law enforcement is made aware of a situation that requires their services, will they be able to get a map of the campus, or is that just going to be like a contact between a person at the school to law enforcement?
Okay, so let me try and get your first question. Think of the app almost as an alternative way that you dial 911. That's how I process how this thing is working. So if there's an incident in a school, let's say there's 3 incidents that happen inside of one building, 3 people can call 911 all at the same time, and that information goes to the 911 center, and it's then dispatched. This is just an alternative way that does the same thing. So if there's one school with 3 incidents that are happening at the same time, and 3 different staff people all hit that button, it's sending that same information notification to the 911 center. They're then dispatching the appropriate people that need to be dispatched. So that's how I've been able to wrap my head around understanding, because I had the same questions of, well, what if there's like multiple things that happen in the building? So that's how that works. I do believe with the way 911 centers operate, handling multiple things at one time is kind of what they do. So I don't see that as being a problem if multiple people were hitting the app in one building, or if it was multiple buildings, or if it was, I'm trying to think of a good example, a school that has multiple schools on one piece of property, where things could be happening in different buildings. That's the beauty of this thing with the geofencing, is you'll know they will know because of when you hit it, where you are in the building or which building you're in, versus what I call conventional 911. You call 911, the first thing they're going to ask you is what's the location, nature of your emergency. Well, if you're a teacher and you're panicked and you don't know that the address of this building is 5625 Dillard Drive, you may not remember that. They're going to automatically know that, which is a great thing. The maps, I do envision that in the beginning, SROs will have the app on their phone. They will be able to get a PDF of our building floor plan. So they'll know if you press the app here and they're on the other side of the campus where you are and when you press it. But again, a lot of, just keep in mind as I answer questions about the product, that test phase part is where we're going to get to the nitty-gritty of this. I've seen demos, I've seen the product, but we haven't actually put it in the field of play yet to see exactly how it's going to play.
I think to elaborate a little bit more on those 2 questions, for the first one, the system itself is going to be able to assess and triage each one of those calls or activations, because it'll be linked to that name and that location. So it'll tell you that Juan activated at the conference room or that Kendrick activated in the cafeteria. So it helps, it enhances that for law enforcement, because now they know that there's 2 potential victims or 2 potential needs for assistance in 2 different areas of the building. For the second question, yes, 911 gets access to a feature of it that's called Command Center, where they're going to be able to pull up maps of the school, maps of the floor plan, and also have the ability to communicate with those staff members that activated the button.
Mr. Richard. Other states have this?
Other states have.
I'm asking, like, I don't know, where are they located, where has it been used, that sort of thing?
So they have plenty of states that have statewide programs. They also have school systems that only have school per school have them. Oklahoma was one of those that participated in our benchmarking. They initially had it, Norman County in Oklahoma, they initially had it individually, they just got it themselves, and then after about 5 years of implementation, the state adopted the entire program for their state, so they've had it individually and for the state. So yes, it is the only panic button that has implementation statewide for several states.
Okay. And just so I'm clear, this was developed by who exactly? Like, is this,
The application itself?
Yeah.
Motorola.
okay. All right, so have they been able to provide instances of when it's been used?
Yes, and through the benchmarking, I also verified that with those counties where they've used it for mostly medical emergencies. I think luckily they haven't had any active assailants.
Sure.
Mostly medical emergencies. The selling point for them was Staff Assist, which is where you can communicate with the staff. You can create a template of 10 different responses. So if you have a spill, if you have anything that's less of, not first responders run into your building.
Sure.
You can have that inactivated within the building or within the district without having to have first responders there. So yes, it has been used before.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Ms. Caulfield?
Thank you. This is a great presentation. I appreciate it. You said that the pilot's going to start in April,
That is correct.
and then you'll come back to us. Is it just is the pilot for the fourth quarter? How long is the pilot?
It's going to be for the fourth quarter.
Okay, so we should hear back by the summer or something?
That is
when
correct.
They review it? Awesome. And I agree. Was there any resistance? Because I agree with Mr. Tyler. If there is only certain people that have it downloaded, it's really not as effective as it could be, and it only takes one instance to say
Yes.
it's not working, but.
So, again, from the benchmarking, what we learned was that other districts face the same challenges of, they didn't want to mandate the application, again, for all the other reasons that I mentioned before. Their learning experience was that once it was implemented, they got the buy-in. One of the things that was successful for them too is that you don't have to download the app to receive the notification, so you can just enroll your number and get text saying your school just had so-and-so emergency. To use it, to activate it, you do need the app, but to be part of the school that receives the information, be aware of the emergency, you don't have to download the app. So it kind of provides different options for that buy-in of, you may not want to download the app, but you're still part of the program by being, a recipient of the information.
Okay, and you said this is between teachers and staff that could use it. Sorry. This is not giving any information back. That would then go to communications, correct? Like we get alerts when there's a safety concern or something,
Yes.
that then goes to our communication,
Right.
and then we send out a notification. They're not linked together, right? This is just a safety.
So it'll be safety, and then communications comes on the back end of it, of course, so they'll be part of the recipients of that information.
Okay.
And it allows them to communicate to the staff, from the communications bar to communicate to the staff back and forth for assistant principal and anything that's needed during the emergency. Yes.
I thought so, I just wanted to be clear. And then the last thing is, it mentioned that there's a wellness piece. Can you speak a little bit about that?
The wellness check.
Yeah.
So what it does is that once you activate the button, for me at the command center or for 911, I'll be able to send back notifications to tell you, are you okay? Do you need assistance? Or is there anyone with you that needs assistance?
Okay.
So what it creates a map of 20 little dots of people that activated the app. 10 of them are green, 10 of them are red. That you know that the red needs some type of assistance. That's what the wellness check is part of that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Of course.
Mr. Richards, you have a follow-up? Yeah, I wanted to piggyback on Ms. Caulfield's point. So this goes to communications. You'll get the notifications as well when when someone hits it, worst case scenario, or medical emergency. How does that flow to the communications team in order for them to then, if they have to put out something school-wide, to parents?
So it has different layers of communication where users can be set up as auditors, which will be like response staff, so like myself, Mr. Scott will be response staff, where we have access to everything. You also have layers for the communications team, so they get a notification saying this type of emergency just took place at this school. They'll get the notification and then immediately they'll be activated. So it provides a notification on their side and then provides ability for them to communicate with the staff through the same app.
I'm just going to add on to that one. This does not supersede the district,
Command center.
the crisis communication plan or the crisis response plan that the district has. And in that plan, this provides another way to notify of an issue. The same as a telephone call, the same as an email, the same as somebody watching somebody in crisis. Once that happens, the central system is activated, and that central system is the system that security does to activate myself, risk management, like all of the transportation department. There's a whole back piece of that as part of how we manage crisis that goes into effect. This supplements that. But it does not replace that. It also does not replace that when we share information, that we have a responsibility, whether they have the app or not, to share that information with every stakeholder.
Sure. Okay, thank you for that clarification.
And I'll just add just a bit more. Two factors that make this thing great: speed and efficiency. That's what I'm after, because that's one of the things that we've identified when we have after-action reviews of incidents that we have, is how fast and how efficiently we can get information to move around. And to your point, Mr. Ing, technology is a great way to harness doing some of that, where it can automate some of that quickly and efficiently versus me calling Ms. Luton and say, hey, we've got this incident, and me calling Mr. Strickland saying I need X, and then calling Mr. Neer saying I need Y. This lets everyone know quickly, and that's what we're after, is that speed and efficiency in one place that everyone has. So those are the two big factors for me that I was most interested in when I looked at this.
That's great.
Just for clarity, so no other districts in the state have gone this far in a pilot program? Do we know?
So there are several districts in the state that have they actually have the application already.
Oh, they already use it,
Yes.
okay.
The ones that are pilot right now, we are part of the pilot, yes.
Got it, okay.
Okay, coming back around, Professor Johnson-Hussle, I didn't get to you. Did you have anything? All right. All right, well, I guess that's it. Thank you very much for the presentation. We'll take it all under advisement. Good luck with the final.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Let me see if I've got my tech skills together today. So my portion is going to be very quick. I'm going to be bringing to you today just a high-level review of our event bag rules. They're about to go into place on Friday that we're looking very forward to. So just a high level of how we got to where we are. Principals requested some consistent guidance because there was some schools that were doing their different versions of this, and they brought to us that they wanted some consistency in that. And so that's the big driving piece for why we're doing what we're doing. So the initial group of folks formed to start crafting together this information. Again, this has been provided before. We drafted a document. We went to principals, area superintendents, the chief officers. Anderson Smith weighed in on it. Law enforcement, the SRO Coalition weighed in on it. Athletic directors, our senior director of athletics weighed in on it. And then our office is obviously very instrumental in pulling a lot of these things together. So we tried to get a lot of feedback from a lot of different places. And with the initial goal, again, I think I mentioned this the first time I was before you all on this topic, was let's get something together and let's get it off the ground and let it start flying, and then we're going to have an evaluation process as we go along with it. So there you're going to have, so this just high-level pieces of the rules itself. It's going to be applied at high school spectator events, beginning on March 1, which is Friday. This is, again, it's going to create that standard and consistency. It's one of the things that we are really trying to push in our office, is to make sure that folks are doing the same thing everywhere. So that's kind of piggybacking on our visitor management pieces. We wanted to have, instead of all these pieces out there, a consistent way of doing things. We plan on reviewing this on a monthly basis once it gets off the ground, because we know, and again, I think I made this point before, we'll probably be making some tweaks. The goalposts will probably move here and there, but I think in large, what's here is what's going to be here. But as we get that feedback from our principals, that's what's going to move the goalposts. If there's something that's out there that we didn't think of, that they think, hey, we need to do this differently, we're going to be flexible to do that. Because again, I've communicated to the principals, we're not doing this to put a burden on you. We want to make sure that this works for you. So if there's something that's not working, let us know so we can make sure that we communicate to the community and to the broader school district that we're going to make a change in some way. It's going to increase safety at spectator events. Someone asked me earlier today, what does a clear bag do for you? Well, it is a deterrent, because if I can see what's in your bag, it makes it much harder for you to bring something into an event that you shouldn't have there. So that's why you typically see these things at other large-scale events. Most colleges and universities are already doing this. There's some other private and charter schools in Wake County that are already doing it. I believe PNC Arena is already doing it. So there's several places that are already doing this. It will probably be a standard at some point around other school districts as well. So we have a communications plan that launched to inform all our stakeholders. We wanted to make sure all our principals were on board. I met with all the athletic directors. Staff has been given information on this. Students have been given information on it. The greater community has been given information on it. I've held open office hours. I did 4 sessions over the last 2 weeks where principals could come in and ask questions to get clarity, to get any information or guidance that they were seeking. Just those doing that alone gave us some information of things that we were considering that we may want to change as we get this thing off the ground. But our first goal is just to get it up, get it moving, and then look at anything that needs to be changed. We had signs developed in English and Spanish. We have on our Wake Connect site for our internal stakeholders. All of our principals can go there. There's a broad FAQ section. We're in the process after, I think it was Ms. Caulfield that mentioned something about the training aspect that had me thinking more about it. So I talked with communications, and we're going to actually make some very short videos that are going to go on our FAQ page that will actually show the process. It's kind of similar to what we did for our visitor management system, so that schools can see what the process looks like instead of just reading about it. And I think that will help those schools that have some questions about how will this look when I actually implement this. So we're going to try and do a mock video stand-up, if you will, of showing them how this will actually work. And again, those virtual office hours, I'll probably be conducting some more of those as we go through. The nice part about this is we're going to get it up and moving in the spring, so we'll be able to get tweaks out of the way and everything kind of flushed out for when we start the school year anew, July 1 for year-round folks, and then again in the fall, when we have our bigger events like football games, we'll have flushed out, hopefully in that last part of the school year this year, items that we may want to change going forward. And with that, I'll answer any questions you all have.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. So I know that we'd had several schools that had a practice with clear bags around sporting events, and is the idea that as we standardize this and we move it all throughout the district, we're trying to prioritize those situations where we have, non-students, other people coming to campus and coming in the buildings?
Yes, sir.
And these are mostly for the events where we don't have the check-in or the check-in system?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
At this point, has there been a discussion about expanding it to other situations?
So we are looking to do this. This is kind of the guidance I've been giving principals. Anywhere where you've got a spectator event where the public can come to your building, football game, lacrosse game, school play, chorus event, that happens in an area that is contained where there's one way in, one way out. Football stadium, gym, auditorium. This should be in place for those types of things. So if you go to any of those three, this is what we want to see happen.
Sounds great. Are there any questions from members of the board? Dr. Ng?
Just as a practical question, where would people obtain these clear bags, or what are the viable options for people that may not be able to afford to buy a bag?
So there's a lot of different places. One, we're going to put on our FAQs, places where you can just click link. Amazon's got them for literally, I saw one for $5. I've seen some for as low as $3. Most of your, because again, your PNC arenas and your universities, a lot of places already do this, and a lot of the private schools and charter schools are also already doing it. So a lot of your large big box retailers around here are already selling those. So if you want to go to a Dick's Sporting Goods or a Target, they typically sell them as well. But we're going to make sure in our FAQs we have some sense of, if you don't know where to go get it, click, purchase.
A Ziploc bag would do.
Excuse me?
A Ziploc bag would be fine too.
Clear, correct.
Any further questions? Ms. Caulfield?
When do they expect that the training, like how long will that take? I understand it's going to be a process for staff to use the bags.
So are you asking about how fast we're going to get those videos together?
Well, it said that it's coming, so
Yeah, so
like what's the time frame that you expect that might take?
I would hope that those videos, we made them for the Verkada system in a day. So I'm hoping that as soon as the communication photographers folks can give me a schedule as to when they're available to do that, it's not, because these are going to be less involved in the Verkada videos that we did. So I'm thinking like a very quick 10-second, you're walking in, this is what it looks like. And those, I mean, it takes a day to make them.
Okay.
So as soon as they get me their availability, we'll get those out.
Awesome. And I do appreciate the training aspect part of it, and also the one time a month reviews. I think that'll wind up being very valuable, so
Yes, ma'am.
I like that. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on the bag policy? All right, thank you, Mr. Scott.
Ready for your secretary.
So we will turn on the
Yield the chair
agenda
to you.
to our next agenda item, which these are about Narcan and naloxone programs in the schools.
Load the next.
We have Michelle Woodson. I don't see Kelly Creech. Who's joining you here today? Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, hold on. I need to put these on.
There you go. Here I am.
There you are. I apologize.
That's okay.
All right. Good afternoon, Ms. Creech.
Good
So,
afternoon.
who's driving the presentation?
I'll probably just start, but Kelly will certainly be
Okay.
doing that. But good afternoon. I hope you all are well. We are going to spend some time with you all today to talk a little bit about Nulaxin, a program for our schools, and we really want to just talk about some general information to give you about where we are and where we are in the state. I'll turn it over to Kelly.
Thank you all very much. I am Kelly Creech, and I wanted to start with just some general information. Naloxone is, we call it Narcan, most of us. You hear Narcan everywhere you go. That is, naloxone is a generic name for that. It is a drug that is used for opioid overdose, a very successful drug that is used for that. It is an antagonist for the drug, so someone who is overdosing usually will have a lack of respiration, or they quit breathing, or their breathing slows. This kind of grabs hold, tells that drug, we're not going to let that happen to you, and it helps the person to start breathing again. It is sometimes not immediate. It may take 2 doses for that to happen, but it will reverse that drug if given and restore breathing. The effects don't last long, and again, sometimes it would take 2 doses. We hear a lot lately about fentanyl being in the drugs and laced with this. I've had questions, does this cover the use of fentanyl? Yes. But fentanyl is a heavy-duty opioid, so it sometimes would take 2 doses in the event. It is critical when this is administered to contact 911 and get someone there. The other thing that can happen, because it's a temporary treatment, someone can have what's called a rebound, so 4 hours later, there may be a necessity for this to be given again. There are different types, usually in a community setting, school setting, those sort of things. It is intranasal, which is in the nose. It's a mist that is sprayed, very easy to use. There's also applications that are in the muscle. That is sometimes what you see when 911 responds, that they will do that. Subcutaneous, which is just under the skin, that again is usually in an inpatient situation or a 911 situation. And then, of course, it can be an IV, which would certainly be advanced medical treatment that would do that. Possible side effects, these are in no particular order, and you can see they're not alphabetical. They were just pulling from data the things that you would see. There has been questions about agitation, and our friends in EMS say that you do not see that as much when you have a nasal mist as you do in situations where you may have it in the muscle or something, and the dosage is there. Questions, what if you give it to someone and they're not overdosing? What if it's something else? It looks like an overdose and it's not. According to the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services, it's not going to be a problem. They're saying generally it should cause no health effects if it's given. The other thing that Center for Disease Control and Prevention tells us, that if someone is overdosing on a drug other than opioids, is there a problem if you give it to them? No, it's not a problem, but it will not work if it's not an opioid that you're using it for. So, a little bit of data and why it's important to have this medication available. We see overdose a lot have had an increase in 10 to 19-year-olds significantly since 2019. And there is a lot of data to support that during the pandemic, during COVID, there was a huge increase in the use of opioids during that time. There's also information that has come out from the health brochure that's put out by DHHS, their school health program, nursing programs, and it gave us, through the state of North Carolina in schools, that it was used in 21 incidences, and that's in North Carolina, for suspected overdose. That doesn't mean it was an overdose. They listed it as suspected. In the event of those administration, there was an incident that school resource officers administered in 13 incidents, and the administration by a school nurse or a nurse extender was in 3 incidences as well. There currently have not been any reported in Wake County schools to my office or to the school health program. So when we did a sweep of just data for public school districts and what you would find, there are 83 counties in North Carolina, and this was provided to us again by DHHS, the school health program. There are 83 counties that the medication is given by SROs in the school setting. That's on school grounds. There are 22 counties that it is provided through a board policy. The school system has a policy to support it, and that is out of 86 counties that report it. So what would we need? Supports. What would it look like? Policy. And there are plenty of templates. There are things that are done within the state. The National Association of School Nurses has templates that they give to look for what board policies would look like. I'm sure our friends at Farrington Smith have what policies would look like for the administration and support of this being in schools. Our general statute that's up here provides civil and criminal immunity to people who give this in what's called good faith. That means you suspected the person was overdosing when you gave them this medication. One thing I did want to say, individuals with license are held to the standards of their license. So if you do not have any sort of medical license, you're giving it in a Good Samaritan type situation with good faith. If you have a medical license, you are held to the standards that reflects whatever your license are in your position. Standing orders. An order is something that authorizes the dispensing or distribution of a medication. There are 2 ways that this can be done in North Carolina. It is either through the state health director standing order protocols, where a prescription is written by a private provider, and it can be, it's outlined in the general statute how it can be administered. School systems that choose to make it available through the Board of Nursing, there is a standing order through that. But school nurses through this cannot delegate to unlicensed assistant personnel if that is the route that it goes. It's not a delegatable task to administer this.
Ms. Cooch, if you don't mind, could you explain that just a little bit more?
So in North Carolina, all nurses have their own practice, and there's a delegation tool. So we have the ability to train, teach, do competencies with people who are non-medical for them to administer medications. For instance, in a school setting, an inhaler a child may be assisted with an inhaler when they are having symptoms of asthma. That is taught, directed by, plan of care is prepared by a school nurse, and then a competency, a return demonstration the staff has to give that they are capable and competent to provide that service. So that actual task, that medical intervention, is done on the nurse's license, on their registered nursing license. So there's certain things that cannot be. For instance, an assessment, to assess if someone is having that asthma attack without having that care plan that says these are the symptoms. Does that make?
It does. I have another question, but I'll bring it up at the end. Thank you.
All right. So standing orders or written prescriptions, there's two ways to do it that we've talked about, through the state health director or through the North Carolina Board of Nursing. Cost, there's always a cost. There are places and people and communities that, community resources for this medication. But the average cost, because you're putting 2 applications in a school, is anywhere between $6,500 or $30,000 for us if we were to put 2 in each location. So they can run anywhere between $15, $16 all the way up to $70, depending on how they're packaged, what they are, and what the brand of medication is. The good part is that the FDA in 2020 extended the shelf life. This used to be, these medications were only good for 1 year. So that would be a financial, you'd have to look at that financially annually for replacement. There's also a replacement if you use it. So you'd have to think about how often you used it and what you would do to replace it. Other thing is they need to be stored in a UV blocking storage bag. So this is not something you would take out on a soccer field and lay on a bench and it would be in sunlight. So with that, with all of this would come training of storage and how things would be done. It would be placed in a designated secure area, would be the same place everywhere. It wouldn't be each school would make a decision or location would make a decision. It would be something that we do. And we're already doing that with stock epinephrine. So we have epinephrine in schools and it is stored in a location and we do that throughout the system. It needs to be easily accessible so that staff can get to it to administer it. Storage should follow the recommendations, so it's room temperature. You see the degrees here again, not direct sunlight, not laying out on a field somewhere, not stored in a hot school where the air conditioner may not be on, those sort of things we'd have to think about. Protected from direct sunlight, and you have to monitor it monthly. So that's some of the guidelines that come with it.
Kelly, for clarity purposes for the board, the cost you mean for Wake County?
For Wake County schools, yes. If we were to put 2 doses in each location. That's a ballpark. I'm not an accountant, so it's just a ballpark.
And that's the medication. That's not including the storage. We would have to purchase the requirements for storage as well.
Well, actually, in that case, if we're going to get some clarification, Ms. Caulfield, did you have a further question on that?
I was just curious because that's a big span, 6,500 to 30,000. Is that?
It's a big span in cost when you look it up. It can be anywhere from $15 a dose to $70 a dose, depending on the product name, where you get it, how it's purchased, those sort of things. So I would think, and this is just a think, that if you're purchasing 5,000 doses, it's going to be much cheaper. So in a hospital setting, for instance, where they would purchase a large number, or EMS would purchase it, the amount of the dose would be much less expensive than if you were purchasing it in a smaller amount. That's only a guess, though.
Mr. Hershey?
Does that mean we could potentially partner with a local hospital when they order it to make sure we get I don't know what the rules
So
are.
I'm going to say that I can look into that and let you know, but again, the orders, so you have to be careful because dispensing a medication has to be done through pharmacy board, and it's a lot of legalities around that. So I'm going to say I'm not sure, and that's something I certainly can look into. But when you start doing medication, even though it would be easy for you to get a prescription and walk into a pharmacy, it becomes a little more complicated when we're doing it for a school system and need to make sure that our staff is not dispensing.
It would not discourage me from doing it. I just asked since you mentioned
And
bulk orders.
that's a great question, and I can certainly find out.
Let's continue, and then we'll do more questions at the end.
So the recommendations are to research and review existing policies, to see what other school systems have in place, not only in North Carolina, but nationally. What are schools looking at when they start putting these in place? The policies would reflect who would do it, how it would be done, the expectations of the board and of the school system of what this would be. Funding. There are grants. There are already community partners that have access to grants. So it would be researching and reviewing the funding sources for the purchase of this. And then the placement. The recommendation is all schools, early learning centers, central services. One of the things that I'd like to say here, and the only thing I've left is resources for you guys, is this is not just a school system problem. This is a community problem. So when you have parents that are coming in to bring children to early learning centers or to here, anywhere we are, and I really think that one of the things that I think most is someone looked at me one time and said, do you really know anybody that does this? And I said, the thing that's sad about this is it's hidden very well. Yes, my answer is yes. I just don't know who they are.
Good answer.
So I think that being prepared, if we're looking at this, we need to be prepared. And prepared, some school systems only do high schools. So we only need it at high schools? I mean, there's a lot of questions I think we need to think about in the placement. And then last are the resources. So all the information that I've provided for you today is in one or more of these resources that I've given you the links to here. And I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have, if I can. If not, I'll get the information for you.
Thank you, Ms. Critch. I appreciate it. I know this is something that, a lot of board members have had a lot of interest in. We've had parents and people in the community come to us and talk to us about this issue. And it's reassuring to see that we have other models of other school systems, even here in North Carolina, that have been able to successfully put this in the school. Can we go back just to your recommendations page? Thank you. So it sounds like our next steps would be to research comparable policies that might exist in other North Carolina systems, bring something to policy committee that might be similar to an existing policy. In terms of funding, that would be something that our budget team would look at and go into the requests. And then after those two steps would be something that the administration would look at particular placements and how we would handle that. In understanding how all of this works, I was really interested in this distinction between administering the medication in a life-saving situation as a Good Samaritan versus administering it as a licensed professional. Because we saw up there what you were referring to about being able to administer it through like a delegation of nurses' authorities and orders. But it would seem like if you had those 21 incidents, 13 by SROs, 3 by nurses, that still gives you other administrations that took place by somebody else.
And I'm just curious, were those in a Good Samaritan setting? Was there anything that needed to be done in advance of it, or is it just?
So that
like
information was not given to me. That was I've shared all the information that the school health program gave me. But with the Good Samaritan part and the part about the license. So I'm a registered nurse and have a license. In order for me to give medications to someone, it puts me in a completely different situation than Good Samaritan. So when and in our schools, that would not affect anyone that would be Good Samaritan that doesn't have a medical license. When you have a medical license, the standards is not at the Good Samaritan law, but what your license make you capable of. Could you do an assessment? Would you check their vital signs? Did you count their respirations? There are different things that would hold you accountable to the license. So some bystander on the street that says, I have this for my child and I don't think I can use it, then it would be done. The other thing, most anyone is going to use that with or without a license because you're going to be trained to do it, and your license would cover that in an emergency situation.
So then, just to be clear, if you had a urgent, life-saving situation, and you had a location on site, but we don't have a school nurse in the building, or we don't have an SRO in the building, someone at the building could administer the medication.
Yes, because the way the policies are set up and through the state health director, through that standing order, they can be trained by public health and some other entities to give that. There would have to be training, people would have to be checked off. It's not really, there's no standard of the training, it just says there has to be a training. The only thing that with the nursing board, with the standing order from them, it would not allow nurses to delegate. But through the other way, with someone else training, that is successful in getting to where we would want to.
All right, thank you. Questions from the board? Mr. Hershey?
First, I want to thank our board chair for bringing this and the other issues in the and just having a safety and security meeting today. Really appreciate this particular issue. I know I harped on it last year. It's one of these things where I hope we never have to use it, but I'd much rather have it and never need it than need it and not have it. So I would thank you for this presentation. I could not support this anymore. I mean, it's like, I support it that much, like we have to do this to me, regardless of the cost. It's unfortunate that that's where we are as a society, but I just want to thank staff, and for me, a potential overdose is maybe one of those 10 items that you have on rave. It's kind of what I thought about, and when you're responding to situations, without knowing what the other 9 might be, but that's kind of where I went with this. And I just want to thank staff in general today for all these items and for moving us forward on the safety and security front. It's impactful. It means a lot to our students and our families who are listening and who are going to be learning about this. I received positive feedback yesterday before the meeting, before today, before I really knew what was coming today. So that's how much parents are engaged and how much they appreciate this.
Thank you, Mr. Hershey. Dr. A?
Yeah, I agree. This is a very vital, coming from my background, this is kind of seconds count, right? And I think that, this is in some ways very similar to the, history of implementation of the automatic, external defibrillators. It used to be like something that only people in the, medical community would do, but, as that became more available in the community, everybody learns how to do it. It's part of the training for, BLS, and that becomes accepted, and it's just something that's easy to do, and I don't think there's going to be any problem with, erring on the side of caution, because if somebody has, you're concerned about an overdose, and that this medication does not have any untoward effects on somebody who have other issues, and and it actually does help with potentially diagnosing or eliminating that problem as a reason for a person having an ultra-mental status. So, it's one of the tools actually in the medical community that we use. The first thing is that you administer the Narcan and then see if there's a recovery. If it's not, then you have to go on to your next diagnostic step. So I think that it doesn't hurt to have this in the very front of, so that the community, the schools can access it and use it, and then when the EMS come, then they're already one step ahead in terms of their diagnostic, judgment. So, yeah. So, thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Ms. Caulfield?
Thank you for that. Very informative and helpful. And is there going to be like a community engagement piece? Like talking about training and stuff like that. I think when you mentioned different age groups, excuse me, it is all age groups, unfortunately, and it's not just high school. The kids are getting younger and younger. Things are getting more and more dangerous and more unknown to parents, what's out there. And I feel like, unfortunately, students might also find themselves in these situations where they might be the one assisting in the help. So just training community as a whole. Parents even knowing they may not need it at the school level, but just training and understanding just lets everybody know what's available, how it works. I knew about it, but I can't say I understood really what the drug did. I just knew it fixed it. I didn't know why and how. So you've broken that down for us today. I think that's a good educational piece when it comes to mental health and substance abuse, that we share this with families. Obviously, we can't supply it, but you've given us the cost breakdown of what it does for us for all of our schools. And I think that's an important piece, and I appreciate all the information that you gave us today. Thank you.
Mr. Swanson?
Yeah, I echo everything that's been said, but I just wanted to kind of flesh out a couple of pieces here. And I thought Chair Haggerty was getting to it, so I just want to, for those that may be watching, just kind of get to the nuts and bolts of it. Since the Parental Bill of Rights is in effect, if a child hypothetically is experiencing a potential overdose, and that child family has not opted in or given us rights to administer those things, where's that liability there? Or is there a liability?
So deal with that.
Well, I think that it's a good question and one we can explore further, but I agree with Ms. Creech that the statute gives specific and grants specific immunity to anyone who administers naloxone in good faith, so long as they've had basic training, and the statute even clarifies that the training can be just receiving and reading the information in the box, essentially. So I'm inclined to think that that's a pretty solid immunity defense. It's not a gross negligence standard. It's just a straight immunity, so long as it's reasonable and in good faith. And I think that would prevail, but I'd be happy to double check on that.
And Mr. Swanson, as follow-up, we had looked at this issue with the North Carolina School Boards Association, and the original version of that legislation did not recognize a Good Samaritan exemption, and many school board members, many physicians brought that up. And so when it came to the passage of the budget bill, there was language in the budget bill to make sure that exception was recognized for exactly the same concerns that you have, because you would not want someone hesitating in that situation, wondering if they've done the paperwork in order to save a life. Any further questions?
So Ms. Creech, again, I guess the question I had, which is even more, I guess, salient based on Mr. Ramey's responses, while yes, the law allows, having been trained, include reading and to review it, you talked about the cost. I guess I'm also curious about the actual cost to time and people. Of course, I would not be ever advocating that people reading it would be training. And so I know that you currently use both in-person but also training, other platforms to train people on. Mostly my experience with you is legislative requirements. And so I guess is that something that you all have already thought about? Which I see Ms. Wooden still nodding her head, so I'm curious if you've already thought about what, because again, for me, this is one of those things, like, every teacher knows what to do with their little red bag, and they train every PTA parent who goes on a field trip with them what to do with their red bag. So I'm trying to think about, like, how you actually normalize something that is going to still, people still have fear with the defibrillator, so they certainly were going to have some fears with this.
I truly think that what we're looking at, and in my mind, and I think that's why Michelle was kind of laughing a little bit, is this is like epinephrine, like the stock epinephrine. You know, when it came into the school, it was like, oh, you can't do that. And there are people who can't, right? There are people who can't, but we make sure that there is a certain number in a school that are trained because the law dictates that a certain number be trained. Although we don't have the legislation or the law behind this, I see this as being the same thing. You know, the people who are trained in stock epinephrine can also be trained in Narcan, response teams in the school that respond to medical emergencies. There's someone that shows up to give that stock epinephrine. There can be someone to do this. I think this is another one of those drugs that you don't wait to see if you need it. You show up with it, and if you need it, you have it, and if you don't need it, then it goes back to the safe place for it to be restored.
Perfect. Thank you.
Fantastic.
So, Mr. Chair, what I would recommend is that, I think I see where the board may be on this. I think we all agree with it. And so we will come back to the April Safety and Security meeting with some recommendations about policy and perhaps a timeline of how we move this forward. So I think that'll give us time between now and then to look at exactly what is possible and then get more feedback from the board about any other questions or concerns you may have about the implementation.
Wonderful, Dr. Taylor. I appreciate that. I think that's the same read that I'm getting from my fellow board members. And that'll give time for community input and look maybe at some of those other policies and some things we can all just do in this setting and not have to wait behind other policy agenda items as well. So, all right. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Whitson. Thank you, Ms. Coach. All right. So then, for the next item that we have, you'll remember we had discussion at the end of last year and then early in January about our memorandum of understanding with the different municipalities and our county government, our sheriff's office, about our school resource officers. And there was public feedback that we gotten about parental concerns about school interaction with SROs, family interaction with SROs. And as we examined the issues, there were a number of questions about things which, as we looked at them, seemed to be more grounded in school policy or school practice, rather than residing with law enforcement. And as we said then, we weren't going to let these slide. We were going to bring them back and talk about them in a public setting. And I think all of these issues are things that can be discussed. They're not closed session issues. So we wanted to go through some of those topics right now with Mr. Scott, allow everyone on the board to ask questions they might have. I thought I would start it off. One of the principal questions that we've heard from parents has been, if there is an incident on a school campus and a student is taken off campus by law enforcement or an emergency responder, what protocols are in place to notify the parents, especially the parent of the child that's taken off campus?
So let me address two places where we can reference what that procedure is to look like. First, I would point us to our policy, which is policy 5120, relationship with law enforcement. Number 7 specifically states that unless there's neglect or the parent is implicated in something, that the school must make reasonable attempts to contact the parent guardian. And in cases, and then number 8, piggybacking on that, in cases where the parent guardian cannot be reached for questioning, that the principal in loco parentis has to step in and be present and not to do any questioning without our principal or school administrator delegate being present. So that's our first reference point. Our second reference point is in the MOU itself, and it's pretty much lifted exactly from policy. Article 3, Section 3, subsection C speaks to investigations and arrests, and it's, again, just about exactly verbatim, word for word. I believe at the time that the board put this together, they wanted to lift policy and put it in the MOU to make it that much stronger. And so it's basically the exact same language in the MOU as well. What I can speak to is that in practice, in my time in the field, and I brought with me Mr. Canterbury, who is our director of day-to-day operations, who can also speak to what's currently going on in the field. That practice has happened. I see it all the time whenever there's the need. Now, I would say probably when it goes astray, if you will, in my experience when I've seen it go astray, is 2 things that happen. The contact information for the parent is not either up to date or accurate or bad, and we have a lot of trouble getting in touch with the parent. Or, in more cases than not, the school would notify one parent, parents aren't together, they notify dad, for example, and dad doesn't tell mom, but it's mom's week that week, and then mom doesn't know, and there's a communication breakdown that happens outside of us, but we have notified a parent and met this by talking to dad, but dad just didn't talk to mom, or sometimes vice versa. And that happens, I would say probably in my field experience, majority of the times when there's a problem, it's because the 2 parents didn't talk to each other. One was notified and the other one didn't talk to the other.
And so just as a follow-up, the information about who to call, I'm assuming, is the information that's on file with the school system. But if a parent can't be located, is there an attempt to get the information from the student?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So sometimes what, in my experience, and Mr. Canterbury can attest to this, kid stays with grandma, and we don't have either good file numbers, the numbers are disconnected or change, or we get voicemail, or it's going straight to voicemail, and so we'll just ask it, hey, is there someone else we can call for you? And sometimes the kid will say, oh, I live with grandma, or I live with grandpa, and so we'll make that attempt to contact somebody. But again, our fallback, if we can't get anybody, is the school principal has to be present when that happens. Would you agree with that, Mr. Canterbury?
Exactly, yes, sir. All right, great, thank you. Are there any board questions about this practice, about anything you've heard from the community about this, other concerns? Okay, well, if not, then we'll move on to the next one. I know some members had asked these questions, sent these questions to me by email. So,
Absolutely.
but maybe you've done an excellent job of answering.
I'm trying my best, sir.
I guess I don't have any feedback because I'm not sure what we could do differently. I have a lot of feelings, right, to your point, because unfortunately what we hear more so is administrators stepping in to parental logos because the parent isn't there because they just called them, but what's happening at the building is happening right now. And so, there's just no, you can't give me an answer to that, but that really is kind of the reality checks that cause most parents that reach out to us the issues.
Like when a situation is happening in real time.
In real time. Which most of them do.
Yeah.
So hearing that, even though we can't imagine a solution, do you see any opportunity for improvement or?
Our staff, so what I typically, I think the principals really try their best effort to contact someone in the real time when it's happening. In my experience of being in the field, and Mr. Canterbury, if you see something different, please let me know, but I've been involved in countless investigations where they know, I need to call mom or dad right now, and they're calling. But a lot of times it's the line, the numbers aren't good, we don't have a number. But to your point, ma'am, it's difficult. I recognize that. When it's happening in real time, it's hard to make that, and if I'm the parent, my child, I'm probably going to go silent.
No, totally. And that's why I didn't raise it, but I also want parents to hear their concerns echoed.
Absolutely.
But I also know it's, and one of the things that you literally said it, Mr. Swanson also said it over here is, and I'm not, because there's certainly cases which, we all know is where parents haven't updated their phone numbers. But most of the concerns I'm expressing to you aren't those cases. But I do agree that is also something, I'm glad you said it out loud as well. That's also the role of, not the role of the school, but to say, hey, please, when you change your information, please contact us. So thanks for lifting that up too.
Or talking to your spouse.
Yes, that too.
That's the one I typically run into, is that
I did have one of those too recently, so.
and I think with those, sometimes the administrator may or may not ask, which other parent are you staying with this week? And then they're calling the first number they get, and when someone answers, they tell them, and then that information doesn't get passed. And then unfortunately, the kid is staying with the opposite parent, and that's the one who really needs to know, because that's the one, and they don't, and then we end up getting the
No,
call.
that's a really good point as well.
Thank you. Ms. Caulfield?
Just a question. I know we have actually discussed this in prior meetings, but what is the, for those that are listening to the subject right now, what is the response time? Because, at the time of an emergency or something's happening, the principal is reacting to that with the student directly. So what is the typical time frame of when they get to the parents?
It's probably not the answer you want to hear. It's going to depend. It's going to depend on, does someone answer the first call? The situations in themselves are always different. But typically, I think in practice, what I see is, for example, I'm the principal, AP, you're the student, and we have a parent that we need to call for you. If I'm dealing with the incident, he's making a phone call.
Right.
And so it happens, we try to make it happen. It's not, let me deal with it, then I'll go do it, and not, so I see typically, in my time in the field, that's how that happened. And it's relatively quickly. The hinge or the hiccup occurs when they pull up the power school and there's either no number, they got to ask the kid for the number, or they call the number or two numbers and no one answers, it goes to void. And the things I talked about before, those are the frustrating pieces, because we're trying to get that notification, but it just doesn't happen.
So your typical time is live time, is real time?
Is
It's
fast.
just a delay of which party is trying to contact you. So there's no real delay, it's just a matter of...
I think it would be
on it.
hard to say, and I wouldn't want to try and micromanage a principal to say that when an investigation starts, the clock starts, you have 3 minutes to
Yeah.
make that phone call, and if in the time that the investigation started, at 4 minutes, you were in violation of something.
Right.
I think they're trying to get that communication fast.
So my point is, it is immediate.
Oh,
It's just a
yes,
matter
ma'am.
of when they get you on the phone. It's not, our policy is we contact you right away.
Absolutely.
So the response to this is really just our hiccup.
Well, and I think,
Line them.
I think the other thing to look at is, sorry, no, it's all right. Sorry, Ms. Caulfield and Mr. Scott. I think the other thing to look at is, are there situations where, can a student be taken off campus without the principal knowing or being informed by a first responder?
It can happen. Anything, I would say anything can happen, but that's a very, in my 18 years of being here, and all the investigations I have done, I've never seen a case where an administrator or a principal did not know that a student was being taken from their property. I just could not. Now, I've not been involved in every investigation over the last 18 years, but it would be, I would be having a hard conversation with somebody if I found out that a law enforcement agency came to a campus and took a kid off the campus and nobody was notified. That's a problem.
So then,
if you have a situation where a student is taken off campus, a parent does not receive the notification, I know we say that we have to make a reasonable number of attempts. Is there guidance about like what's considered reasonable?
I think that the reasonableness is, they will call the numbers they have, right? And I've seen a lot of different things happen. You call, the number's disconnected. There's no need to call that number back again. You call, it goes straight to voicemail. You might want to try and call again, because it could just be that they're on the phone. I do think that most administrators, and Lance, correct me if you think I'm wrong, they try to do multiple attempts. If the roadblock is not one that they know is a dead end, i.e. the line is disconnected, they're going to call every number that would, they pull power. If there's 10 numbers listed, it's not like they're going to say, okay, I just called the first one, that was my reasonable attempt, done. I think they typically will go through every avenue, to include asking the student, is there someone else you can call, or we noticed that your mother's number was changed, do you have the new one? We need to make a notification of mother. And sometimes I've seen that's, the kids, you had the wrong one. And they'll show the phone, and this is the number you can call.
Are there any other questions about parental notification in these situations? Anyone? All right, Dr. Ng.
I just think about it from my, medical experience, contacting families in the case of a medical emergency, and it can be certainly, potentially problematic when you can't get a hold of anyone. But certainly there is that sense of good faith that you do make an effort to try to contact it as fast as possible. And I'm thinking that the RAVE system could be you can certainly utilize that to kind of help with disseminating that information to other staff members that can say, okay, delegate to another person quickly to handle this and contact family. And so I think that there's some usefulness for the RAVE in that sense too.
Yeah, not to go back and rehash Mr. Cortez's presentation, but I will be interested once we get it. A lot of what I've seen with a lot of software, our visit management system, for example, because we're buying it from, they're willing to make it do things that customize it for us. So if there's somewhere where we can say, hey, is there a way you can tweak or change this to do something different that maybe it wasn't originally intended to, but can help us in some other area? Would you be willing to do something with this? And it'd be interesting to see. And that may be one of those opportunities where we ask them, hey, is there a way that you can tweak your app to do something that maybe it wasn't typically doing?
Kendrick, and just to add to that, the principals do have access to a tool called Talking Points. Most of them have it on their phones. It allows them to quickly send a text message or an update to all parents and translate it in their language. That already exists and is a quick way for them to get information back and forth.
Mr. Hershey?
There was just real-time feedback from our community, and it was just that parents are more upset about the interrogation of students without notification by SROs on campus. And I'm passing that along. I don't have a question around that, but that was what we received while this meeting was going on.
Okay. All right, then one of the other big questions that came out of that previous discussion was centered around evaluation. If families have, I guess, say, a negative experience, a negative incident with a school resource officer on campus, what are the protocols? How can families share that grievance? We know, unlike, say, the Charlotte Meck system, where they have their own security that is provided through the school system, all of these officers are employees of the respective municipality or the county sheriff's office. But other than directly calling the sheriff's office, or the local PD, are there ways that we collect feedback, we collect complaints? Are there processes in place for providing that feedback and evaluation to the different departments?
what role does the school system have in helping mediate those disputes?
Great question. So a couple of things I'd bring to y'all's attention. So we've had for some time now on our website a grievance section, if you will, and it has the ability to grieve multiple things, but one of those things is in specific the SRO program. So for example, if your kid comes home and says, I had this negative interaction with my SRO, you can go there and send information. It goes directly to us. It's a lifetime thing. It's not something that we have to, check it once a month. The minute you hit send, it alerts me and alerts Mr. Cortez that there's been a submission. We open it, we look at it. Unfortunately, it seems to collect a lot of things that are not SRO related. We know it's active and it's being used because we get notifications all the time there, but it's things that are not SRO related, and the directions are pretty clear. They're about as clear as we can make it that this is for SRO grievances. When we do get them, though, that's the mechanism that they can give it to us. In our last meeting, and in the email that we're responding to today, specifically how parents and the broader community, I think, and student voices can be heard with respect to the SRO program was something that the board was interested in our last meeting. So I want to bring to you today kind of what we've done in that aspect. So we have our grievance process that will always stay in place. That is there, that's working, it's being used sporadically for SRO stuff, but it's there, it's going to stay there. So what we created newly is to get a way to get feedback from the community at large and from the students on the SRO program. Feedback can be positive or negative in this aspect for me. If there's a positive thing they want to let us know about, they can do that as well. So what we've done is we've created a form, a Google form. It's a feedback form. It's going to give us about 4 or 5 data points on it, and then there's open fields that they can fill out a narrative of anything that they want to tell us, good or bad. It will operate in the same fashion, so if your child fills it out and submits it, we automatically get it. We'll automatically look at it live time. It's not that something we got to wait 6 months or a month or a week or check it monthly. We'll get it right then, so that if it is something that's a concern, we can take action on it. And that's something new that we have not had, and that's something that I think we've been missing, that student voice, because they're the ones that are impacted mostly by the SRO program, to be honest with you. So it's important to get what they see, good or bad, feedback that we can then not only, if it's something we need to look into, we can do it then, and we can bring it to the attention of that agency. I think it's a good thing because it's independent of the agency. It comes to us, and then we take it to the police departments. It's not something where it's filtered through a law enforcement agency and then we get it on the back end. This is something that's going to come directly from student to our department, and then from us to the school to make them aware, hey, this is a student or a parent showed this that happened in your building with the principal first, and then we can also go back and follow up with that parent. Hey, we got the notification, we're investigating this matter, and then going to that law enforcement agency and saying, we just got this, this is what we're working on, we need to make sure that you're aware of it. Those 3 bases are covered. And again, I hope that this will also bring in positive feedback, because I want law enforcement agencies to hear that are listening to this, that we do get a lot of positive things that they are doing with our students, whether it's the forming relationships with them, the coffee with the cops thing that they do. There's a lot of positive feedback, and I think a lot of times we concentrate on grievance complaint, but I want to have a mechanism that does both. You can give us positive things, you can give us a grievance, but I think both are equally as important. So and to get it out, it's going to go in the student parent handbook is where we're going to put the links for both of these things. So you'll have your grievance website link that's already out there and active now. You're going to have the link to this Google form. We'll work with the communications folks to get a more robust, because there's no point in waiting to do it at some, we can go ahead and launch that now. We can get feedback whenever we want it. So I plan to go ahead and get that ball rolling. We've already developed the form. We've already got that ready to go. It's been submitted to the handbook, so parents will get that when they get their annual handbook. But we want to make sure that we allow the community now to go ahead and utilize this tool and let us know things.
Okay.
Hopefully that gives you some timelines, some context of what we're trying to do and what we're trying to get done.
Thank you. Any questions about this feedback process? I have like maybe one or two comments, but let's go around the board. Mr. Hershey, anything?
No, not at the moment.
Dr. Ingram, Ms. Caulfield? I'll give him a minute just for
My
that.
explanation is about 1,000 so far.
You are.
Vice Chair Johnson Hosler?
No, but thank you again for bringing up, I mean, you talked about this feedback loop, but I don't think I even understood it was in real time, so I do think that that is helpful for people to know that it is literally in real time, because again, oftentimes people are discouraged because we say we're taking a feedback loop, but to know that you're actually reviewing it in real time, I think makes a difference.
Thank you. And the only other thing that I would add then is just making sure that there are alternative means of submission, right? Not everyone can navigate a Google form. Sometimes there's other problems with online forms. So just, it may be less than 10% of what you take in, but just to make sure that parents know that, and students know, that they can submit something through other channels if required.
Okay. We will definitely,
All right, I appreciate that. All right, well, if there's nothing further, were there any other questions or concerns regarding those items we had discussed in our previous work session related to this topic? Okay, well, if not, we do have a couple closed session agenda items. And so what I would need at this time is I would entertain a motion for us to go into closed session.
Motion to go into closed session.
Second.
I had a motion from Mr. Hershey, a second from Mr. Swanson. All in favor of going into closed session to prevent the disclosure of confidential information pursuant to General Statute 143-318A1 and consult with the Board of Education attorney and preserve the attorney-client privilege under GS 143-318, 11A3, and to formulate plans relating to the prevention of school violence and the development of emergency plans under General Statute 143-318. Please say so by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we will be in closed session. We'll take a minute for the room to clear and to take care of the AV. All right?